What's going on, everybody? Mortem here, this time bringing you the much anticipated Devourer's Armor Guide for the Relics of Rivellon gift bag for Divinity Original Sin 2. So, the Devourer's Armor is, of course, kind of the coup de grace of this gift bag. It is, in fact, pretty much the strongest melee armor set in the game, short of rogues, because it's a strength set that's more for actual melee fighters and not rogues, so important distinction there. But other than that, melee fighters, just about the best armor set you can get. First things first, we are going to run through the quest and how to get each individual armor piece and how that quest resolves. Now, it spans the entire game, so it is a bit lengthy, so buckle in. So the quest starts in Act 1, of course, where we first need to find the gauntlets. Now, we're going to find these inside of Brachus Rex's tower, which is in the southeast portion of the island on this map that you can see here. In here, you can find a cursed banded steel chest. Now, I mentioned it's cursed. You need to cast Bless on it before you try to open it. After that, once you open it, you'll find gauntlets and a letter. Now, when you pick up the gauntlets, you will be accosted by a voice of flame who directs you to find a place that the spirit attached to the gauntlets used to frequent so the voice can speak to you again. Now, I want to point out here that the voice talking to you and the spirit bound to the gauntlets are two separate entities. That can get a little confusing at this particular stage. The voice directs you to a place the spirit that inhabits the gauntlets used to frequent, which actually turns out to be the study that is Judge Oravan's room in Fort Joy. The letter contains some information talking about the Devourer's armor set and the Outlaw Empress. The Outlaw Empress was apparently an empress that tried to overthrow the Emperor in the Lizard Empire, which we don't know a ton about. That information's pretty much it. Now, this note just explains that the set exists and kind of gives you a little bit of information about it, but nothing super useful. So from here, we are, of course, going to go to the place that we were directed to go to, this study for the spirit that inhabits the gauntlets. So if we go to Judge Oravan's room, which is right next to where High Judge Oravan is, and that fight begins, we'll find, now that we have the gauntlets in hand, all of these kind of spiritual looking books, kind of see-through. Click on those and you'll once again be spoken to by the voice. He doesn't have a lot to say here except cryptic remarks, really. He just talks to you, tells you that you need to go to the place of stone and death in Reaper's Coast. That's pretty much it for Act 1. Once we get that direction to go to the Garden of Stone and Death, which if you've played the game is pretty obviously the Stone Garden Cemetery, so we'll get to that in a little bit. That's all we can do for Act 1. Now, it doesn't pick up again until we get to Act 2. Now, you're probably going to acquire Spirit Vision first, and I actually recommend you do that before you even try to go to the Stone Garden. Once we acquire Spirit Vision, we can actually use it, and we will discover that there is a spirit following us. And if we talk to him, we can find out that his name is the Chronicler, and he is in fact the spirit that is tied to the gauntlets we picked up in Act 1. Now, if we talk to him, he will explain to us that he made armor plans from old books that the Outlaw Empress requested of him. So basically, she contacted him and asked him to make some plans from these old books that she found, which he did. And then the Outlaw Empress forcibly bound his spirit to the gauntlets after the plans for the armor were, acted upon and the armor was made. Now from here, we're going to head out to Stone Garden. So you will find the boots right next to the Lizard Incineration Pyre on, I believe the title is a Shady Digger. So basically just a dwarf corpse. You'll pick him up and there'll be the boots and a letter. So once you pick up the boots, it'll tell you to go find the dig site so he can talk to you again, the voice in flames, that is. The dig site will be in the Black Pits inside the cave area that you go to as part of some main story related quests that I won't really spoil here because it's not what this is about. But if we use our Spirit Vision again before we get there, we'll find out that there is now an archaeologist following us as well. And if we talk to him, he just tells us to go find the dig site. He won't say much before we go do that. Once we go to the dig site, we can of course talk to the voice in flame again after clicking on some of the red spiritual looking digging equipment. From here, the voice of flame will continue to explain that we need to go to the Nameless Isle. Now at this point with these conversations, you can choose to resist this voice in flame or actually go through with the vision. It doesn't change much regardless of what you choose, but it will kind of affect the dialogue slightly. But the end of it is that the voice in flame tells you to go to the Isle with No Name, which of course is the Nameless Isle. Now that we've done this particular part, we can speak to the archaeologist that we had noticed had been following us after we picked up the boots. If we speak to him now, he will explain that he was hired by the Outlaw Empress to find these dragon bones, which he found, obviously. And those dragon bones were turned into the Devourer's armor set. And then, of course, the Empress went about trapping spirits within said armor. Now, we can't do much else with this until Act 3, which is the Nameless Isle. So, if you need it, there are actually arrows that you can find throughout the island that will actually point in the direction you need to look for this next piece of the quest. So, when we do that, you will find a shrine in a cave south of Zoroastria's altar. There's a cave there, there's now an altar in that cave, and it is an altar to a dragon head. Now, if we click on the altar, we can either A, if we read the journal from Brachus Rex's tower earlier, we will know that we need a fire rune to put on this altar. Also, if you're a scholar tag, you can read the writing on said altar that then tells you to put a fire rune on it. So from there, you go get a fire rune if you don't already have one, and then you put that fire rune in the dragon skull above you's mouth. And once you do that, it will give you the Greaves. And once you get the Greaves from the shrine, you will be directed slightly north of Zoroastria's altar to the abandoned and destroyed Zoroastria's temple to go to a place connected to the spirit of the Greaves, who will then talk to you, as, you know, is a bit of a running theme here at this point. So from here, once we go up to the temple, we can, again, click these spiritual objects that are now on the ground that we can see. Click on those. We're again talked to by the voice, and it is explained that the spirit of the Greaves is a fanatic killed by Zoroastria's followers for preaching about how great the Devourer is. Now, if we talk to the fanatic, it turns out that he was actually a heretic of sorts who was loyal to the Outlaw Empress that we've been hearing about. Now, the interesting thing about the fanatic is he explains that you'll need at some point to devour the spirits that are bound to these pieces of armor to unlock their true potential. Caveat, you might have already done that if you had gotten this far in the quest. It is possible to devour these spirits at any time. I will address that, but not quite yet, shortly later. But in the quest, the first time it is brought up is when the fanatic is like, you know, at some point you're going to have to consume these spirits to unlock the armor's true potential. And then from this conversation with the voice in flames, we can find out that the last two pieces of the armor are in arcs. One is held in the vault of a man named Kim, and one is at the Lizard Consulate. So once we arrive in Act 4, which is the City of Arcs, I'm not going to spoil the story, but through main story events, you will find yourself in Kim's vault, the Vault of Linder Kim. Added to this vault is a display case. Now, this display case has 3 buttons along the bottom of it. If there is anything in-game that tells you the combination to these buttons, I didn't find it. I'm not saying it doesn't exist. I'm just saying I didn't find it. But through trial and error, I did figure it out. You must press these buttons in the correct order. They are the middle button, the right button, the middle button, the left button again, and the right button. Once you click them in that order, the helm will appear in the display case, and the display case will open. Now, once you get the helm, you will be again spoken to by the voice in flames and directed to a workshop. The workshop is the workshop of the toy seller in town. Now, once we go there, again, click on the spiritual items in the room, we will find out that a craftswoman was actually given visions of sorts by a voice in her head. None other than the same voice in flames we've been speaking to. She was directed to seek out the Outlaw Empress so they could dig up these dragon bones and then make them into armor. And the craftswoman is the one who actually made the dragon bones into armor from the plans that the chronicler had made and that the archaeologist had dug up. So from here, that leaves us with one last piece, which is, of course, the breastplate. So if we go to the Lizard Consulate, once we get through the main part of the Lizard Consulate, we'll find ourselves in a little garden. We actually need to get down to the beach below us. So using any sort of movement skill that will allow you to jump down there, be it flight, cloak and dagger, phoenix dive, stuff like that, use a skill, get down there. You can find a note on a corpse, which will actually mention that the Devourer's helm was trying to be spirited away from the Lizard Consulate when it got destroyed. A short ways down the beach, we can find the Devourer's breastplate in a chest. So once we pick up the chest, we are actually directed by the voice in flames to go to the ancient empire place in a city of humans. So this is actually the easiest one. It's literally right above where you jump down to the beach at. So you just need to go back to where you were right before you jump down here. Click on those spiritual items that you now see. and then you will be given the visions of the dreamer. So if you're unaware, dreamers are lizards who are, dreamers. They can see things in dreams, sometimes make them real. It's a whole thing. But this particular dreamer had visions of peace and also visions interrupted by the Devourer bringing destruction and raining death on people. And when the dreamer brought this to the Outlaw Empress and explained it to her, the Outlaw Empress, of course, had her bound to this armor as well. The voice in flame here will actually reveal itself as none other than the Devourer, which is not a surprise at all. If you've been paying attention, you've probably already figured that out. So the voice in flame we've been talking to all this time is none other than the spirit of the Devourer. And he explains that the dreamer will teleport us to where the Devourer is resting. So you can consume all 4 of the other spirits up to this point. You cannot consume the spirit of the dreamer until you talk to the Devourer, because the dreamer is the one that teleports you to the arena that the Devourer is in. So here's where things get really fun. So, fun fact, you don't have to fight the Devourer. He explains that if you consume the spirits in front of him, he will grant you his power, and you guys have struck a bargain, and basically the only downside being that these spirits were hurt. And then he'll unlock the true potential of the armor set, and you can be on your way. We are, of course, going to go over what happens if you choose to fight the Devourer. However, I will say my personal preferred method is to just side with the Devourer, because all you have to do is consume spirits. If you have consumed the 4 spirits besides the Dreamer up to this point, it doesn't matter. Consuming them does not immediately grant the extra power that was hinted at for the armor. You don't get that until you talk to the Devourer and consume, at the very least, the Dreamer in front of him. Consuming the spirits up to this point doesn't do any good for this particular option. Now, we will get into why that's important a little later, but for the siding with the Devourer option, it doesn't matter. Again, I personally choose to side with the Devourer because A, we don't have to fight him, which means it's easier. We still complete the quest, we get the armor set and its unlocked potential. The only real downside to siding with the Devourer mechanically and gameplay-wise, outside of your own moral choice, is the fact that if you choose to side with the Devourer and empower the armor that way, you will not be able to unequip that armor. But personally, in my opinion, this is the end of the game. This is one of the best armor sets in the game. I have no reason to be unequipping it. So personally, I'd feel like that's a bit of a weight in the just side with the Devourer side of things. That said, let's go over what happens if you choose to fight the Devourer. So, if you've left all of the spirits alive, it goes down like this. When you meet the Devourer in his realm and you choose to fight him, the Chronicler, the Dreamer, and the Archaeologist will chain the Devourer's spirit for 1 turn each. The Fanatic and the Craftswoman will fight you with the Devourer. If you're going to fight the Devourer, the best way to do it, honestly, is to consume the Fanatic and the Craftswoman, just consume their spirits through Source Vampirism, before you get to this fight, because then you'll have less mobs to face. Now that said, the Devourer will still summon in extra enemies besides those 2, whether or not they're there. That will make the fight more difficult. But if you want to make it a little easier on yourself, just consume those 2 and then go fight him, and you'll have a few less mobs to face, which will make it a little easier. Now, for the 3 that have him chained, like I said, they will each chain him for 1 turn each. In total, if you left all 3 of them up, he will be chained for 3 turns. Now, while he is chained, he will still take his turn, and what he'll do is he'll trap one of your characters in a bone prison of sorts with like 500 health that's easily destroyed, but it will still take up a few action points to destroy it. And then, like I mentioned, there are still other enemies that will be summoned in to attack you. So it's not just the Devourer. You will still be fending people off. That said, if you choose to get rid of the Craftswoman and the Fanatic before this fight, it's actually not too hard. I managed to beat it on Tactician first try. Wasn't too bad at all. The Devourer himself is a beast. He hits like a truck. You need to keep him as locked down as humanly possible. He is not immune to chicken form, which is one of the best stuns in the game. So once you've gotten rid of all of his physical armor, ideally during the 3 turns he would be chained in, hopefully, if you didn't mess it up, you can then destroy all of his armor and then keep him locked down in chicken form, because he hits like an absolute truck. You don't want to get hit by the Devourer. His other guys are annoying. The people he's summoning will oftentimes cast things like charm and stuff on your characters, so be sure you have something to do with that. Personally, I just like to also use charm. So if you're unaware, if you get charmed by a character and one of your characters just uses charm on your charmed character, it will actually cancel it out and uncharm them. Other than that, the fight is not too bad. If you choose to fight him and kill him, pretty much the same thing. The power then the armor gets its power boost after that. That same power boost that it would get if you had just sided with the Devourer, but again with the added caveat that now you are not actually forced to wear it and you can unequip it and swap it out with other stuff. So there you go, guys. The Outlaw Empress was contacted by this craftswoman who's having visions of this dragon bone armor. The Outlaw Empress went and spoke to the archaeologist and the chronicler to find first the actual dragon bones, and then of course the chronicler was the one who came up with the armor plans for the actual armor, and then the craftswoman turned them into actual armor, and the fanatic was just a follower of the Empress as well, and the dreamer was just trying to prevent the visions of the terrible outcome of the Devourer's rising that she was seeing. There you go, guys. That's all of the lore on this. I have the stats for all the armor up after it is empowered. So when you find the armor, it will actually be at lower levels than what you see on here, but after you complete the quest, it will be brought up to level 20, and then you can see the fully done stat blocks up here. Prior to this, I actually don't recommend wearing the armor unless it just happens to be the best for you at the time, because you will out-level it, but once you get to this point, it's pretty much the best stuff you can get. It is awesome for melee fighters, giving you everything from strength to two-handed to immunity to terrified. It sets picture of health, the talent, without actually having to invest points in it. Just a great set all around. Really can't complain. And again, for a melee fighter, it's pretty much the best stuff you can get. So there you go, guys. There is the guide to the Devourer's armor. I certainly hope you enjoyed it. I had a blast making it and putting it together for everyone. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, by all means, throw them down in the comment section below. Don't forget to give the video a like, comment, subscribe to help me out with that YouTube algorithm. Thank you so much for watching. May you wander in wisdom. Have an amazing day.